The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous supporters. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/donate. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode 143.
One day, I shall come back.
That's it. I've been renewed.
Is when a Time Lord's body wears out, he regenerates.
I'm a Time Lord. I'm not a human being. I walk in eternity.
Braveheart, Tegan.
Change, my dear, and it seems not a moment too soon.
Unlimited rice pudding.
Physician healers. Wearing a mid-fin.
Fantastic.
I am Scottish. I can complain about things.
Ooh. Should be fine.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who. And today we're discussing the fourth Doctor story, The Invisible Enemy. Joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Corey Stika. Hi, Father Corey.
How's it going?
Very well. Guys, before we get started, I have a very important thing I want to recall to you, something from today's an important date, let's put it that way, as we record this. You're listening to this a couple weeks after we've recorded it. But today marks the 5th anniversary from when we first recorded the first episode of Secrets of Doctor Who.
Oh, yay.
Wow.
Yeah, well, this was back when Father Roderick and Stephanie were joining us, and Father Roderick was hosting. And our first episode was the first Peter Capaldi episode, where he showed up. First full episode after the regeneration. Yep. And so we've been doing this for 5 years, and it's been a blast. I have to say that.
Yeah. So if the podcast is 5 years old now, it'll be going into first grade next year.
Yes, exactly. I think we'll homeschool this podcast. So,
There we go.
And if you're just the first joining us for a podcast, if this is your first episode, I do want to encourage you to subscribe to the podcast in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app. We're now on iHeartRadio, just to let you know that, so that you can get our podcast there now. We also posted to the SQPN YouTube channel, where if you subscribe to that channel, make sure to hit the bell so you get notified when a new episode goes up. So today, like I said, we're talking about The Invisible Enemy, a Doctor Who story that stars Tom Baker, the Fourth Doctor. It first aired in October of 1977, and it's four parts, 4 episodes, as they call them.
4 short parts. These are like 22-minute episodes.
Yeah, and a couple things that mark this episode. Well, one is his companion is Leela, so she's still his companion at this point. But we get the introduction of a very famous part of Doctor Who's canon, the Doctor Who universe. This marks the first episode in the introduction of K9.
Yep. Yeah, the first and only good robot companion.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mickey's little tin dog.
Yes, the little tin dog that we get in the 10th Doctor's time. So we'll talk about that as we go along, about K9. But the other thing that it marks this episode, and I'm a little bit of a disadvantage because I haven't seen the prior season of the Fourth Doctor. But apparently this episode marks the return of a TARDIS console room.
Yeah.
Because of some behind-the-scenes problems that they had.
Exactly.
Yeah, so originally, from the very beginning of the show, we had this kind of white control room with roundels on the walls, and then they would have various knickknacks, like a hat rack and stuff, standing there. And that had been the look of the show with variations ever since the beginning. But then in the previous season or so, they introduced a different control room that was like wood. So it had all these earth tones. It had a kind of Jules Verne aesthetic to it.
Yep.
And it was neat. It was like the secondary control room that the Doctor hadn't used in a long time, and we had never seen it before, and they used it for a while. And then between the seasons, they stored the sets, and they like warped and couldn't be fit back together. So they had to come up with a revised version of the original control room, which then remained the standard through the entire rest of the original Classic Who run. We didn't get a major new redesign of the control room until the 2005 revival with Christopher Eccleston's Doctor.
Well, technically, we got
Oh, yes, that's true. In the
TV
movie.
The TV movie.
Yeah.
Which really kind of inspired all of the New Who control rooms from that, because it really set a standard.
Yeah. Although it looked
those.
better.
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't like. I'm not a fan of the New Who control rooms.
Yeah. There's one bit the 12th Doctor had that I thought was okay, but I didn't like the 9th Doctor's, the 9th and 10th Doctor's ones, and I don't like the new one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're kind of we're kind of in agreement on that one.
Yeah, I think we've all agreed. So as the episode begins, we start off on this ship that's traveling, the human ship traveling through what looks like a very crowded asteroid belt. As we've talked about how asteroid belts in science fiction are way more crowded than they should be.
Yep.
And we have these 3 astronauts, 2 of them hanging out in some easy chairs. I noticed little lazy boy recliners on that ship. And they encounter this strange phenomenon. It's actually kind of cool special effect for what they were able to do back then. It's not a digital special effect. It's a camera effect that they've done, where there's something affects them, and they intone this line, which will become important for the rest of the episode. Contact has been made, and so we hear that several times. So the ship encounters this issue. Then on the TARDIS, we have this brief banter between Leela and the Doctor about this new old control room. And I thought the Doctor had an interesting line here. He comments on how he likes humans, but when they get together in great numbers, other life forms sometimes suffer. He has this line here.
And he explains we're about the year 5000, which is the year of the Great Breakout, when humans begin to colonize other star systems. And so some of that colonization is what he's thinking about. When humans get together in large numbers, it doesn't always go well for everybody else. Incidentally, the year 5000 in Classic Who is something we've already heard about in the Talons of Wing Chiang, which is another Leela-era serial. We encounter, even though it's set in the 19th century, we encounter villains from the 51st century when the evil dictator Magnus Greel does stuff, and there's a 6th World War where the Icelandic alliance falls before Filipino forces and stuff like that. So it really has to be a world war if you've got Iceland and the Philippines fighting each other, given how far apart they are.
Yes.
And then in New Who, this is the beginning of the century that Jack Harkness comes from, and that River Song comes from. And so we're kind of at a central historical nexus for the Doctor Who timeline.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. And wasn't there with the Doctor, the 12th Doctor and Bill, where they were on a space station that was in this time period?
General time period, I think. I don't remember the specific century.
Okay. In any case, the ship, this human ship lands on a base on the moon, the Jupiter moon Titan.
Saturn.
I'm sorry, Saturn. I knew I was going to get that wrong. I should have written it down. I like the fact that this ship, which again, this is 1977 when they made this, looks a lot like an American space shuttle, which had not yet flown. It's a few years away.
It also looks a bit like the Eagle from Space 1999, and in fact, the Titan set they use is from Space 1999, the Jerry Anderson series.
Oh, was it? Yeah, because I noticed that when the shuttle lands and then it goes down a platform underground, that was very much like one of the Eagles on Space 1999. I love those things. Those are really cool.
But something else to notice about the series, I really like the visual aesthetic they have that they've set up. It looks genuinely futuristic, given the budget they have. I like how the signs are all spelled phonetically. So instead of emergency exit, it will say emergency exit. And airlock has no K on it and things like that. So in the script, apparently, this version of English was described as Finglish, where everything is phonetically spelled out. So emergency with a J and exit with a G instead of an X.
And you can imagine that over 3,000 years that the language, as the spelling of the language would evolve. I mean, it's certainly in the past just a couple hundred years, English spelling has evolved. So
Yeah.
Well, I mean, compare it even, 500, 600 years ago since Shakespeare,
Yeah.
how much has changed.
And since the invention of texting, spelling has evolved.
That's right.
Or devolved, as the case may be.
Devolved might be.
Something else to notice that kind of struck me, given my own weight loss journey, is how thin everybody is, because we really get to see it in this serial, because they're all wearing this futuristic, tight-fitting plastic clothing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it's not normal baggy clothing that hides a person's figure. You can see everybody's figure. And with the exception of Dr. Marius, who we'll meet later, everybody, man or woman, is quite thin by modern standards. But that's just normal. These were not really thin people back then. In 1977, people were genuinely thinner. These people are at a normal, healthy weight. And that shows what's happened with our diets under the influence of bad government advice and marketing in the subsequent decades.
If you want to learn more about that, the episode of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World on the mystery of weight loss would be a good place to start. So, so these astronauts come off their shuttle, their spaceship, and they're apparently relieving a crew who are already there. They're meeting up with them, and they show up wearing their helmets on, carrying blaster pistols or of some sort, and shoot this crew that they're supposed to be replacing. Meanwhile, there's they lift up their visors after they shoot them, and we see that they have these white scaly stuff on around their eyes
and bushy eyebrows, really excessively bushy white eyebrows.
Yep.
Right, and we get from dialogue that some kind of alien species has taken over these humans' bodies, and they're going to use Titan to breed their race of some sort.
Yeah, what I don't get is why they immediately try to kill everybody. Because they can infect people with this lightning that comes out of their faces. And so why don't they just infect these people instead?
Which is what they do later.
Yeah.
That did make sense. And that, I mean, for plot reasons, but yeah, as far as for the story, it didn't make sense. So there is a supervisor on the station who isn't with the other astronauts, who notices what they're doing and sends out a distress signal.
Yep.
By the way, did you recognize the supervisor, the actor? He is Admiral Ozzel from The Empire Strikes Back. So Michael Sheard. And he also plays Hitler in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Oh, did he? Okay.
So, yeah, he has a very brief.
It's a really funny scene. Indiana Jones has this book, and he just bumps into Hitler on the street as Hitler's marching by somewhere, and
at a book burning.
Yeah, and he hands him this book, and Hitler thinks he wants an autograph and signs it and hands it back.
So it's Indiana Jones' father's journal that guides him to the Holy Grail. So Hitler has signed that.
That's right. I forgot about that scene.
Yeah, it's a very funny scene.
Then they've got a little monkey that does the Heil Hitler salute.
Yeah,
that's right. So Michael Sheard does actually a pretty good job in this, and he ends up he'll end up getting infected by the aliens and sort of being the leader of the aliens here. But I like how he does in this episode. So the doctor hears the distress signal that comes from the Titan base.
And as he's listening to it, Leela has a chalkboard in the TARDIS control room, and she's carefully practicing writing her name. So Leela is learning to read. She's from a savage future world and stuff, so she had no education in writing, and so she's learning her name and her letters, and that's going to become a little bit important later. An interesting thing: the actress Louise Jameson, who plays Leela, is right-handed, but she chose to play Leela left-handed, so she would seem more naturally awkward writing her name.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
And I like the fact that they have this moment of her trying to write her name because the fact that comes from this primitive race, and she's sort of the savage people, as the doctor calls it. That's important to the plot, and so they're reinforcing for the audience. Remember who Leela really is.
Yeah, I mean she's very smart, and you see her in episodes being sometimes an equal to the doctor, but there's still that savage, man type idea.
She will totally kill you. And she's sort of the Worf of Doctor Who.
Yeah. Yes.
Also,
she's ready to kill.
Yeah. Also, we're way in her past. The doctor makes a point of telling her that here in the year 5000, we're in the time of your ancestors. So she's from a time after the Great Breakout, when space has been colonized, and other star systems have been colonized, and then their civilizations have collapsed. And that's why she's from a savage world.
Yeah, I was trying to find, I can't find, at least in any of the, like the wikias or anything like that, when Leela came from. It's just sometime in the way future is all that it really shows.
So she senses this evil in the presence of in the voice of the distress signal. So they hear a distress signal, they're going to it, and then they get a new signal that says, no, everything's fine down here. We just had a weapons discharge and don't need to send anyone down. And she senses the presence of evil in the voice that the doctor doesn't sense.
The second voice that says everything's okay.
Yeah. And then they run into this same alien presence that surrounded the spaceship, surrounds the TARDIS.
It looks like swirling clouds with lightning, and done on a 1977 TV budget. It's actually quite effective for the time.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And the doctor is affected by this, but Leela, for some reason, isn't. So we have this interesting moment. And then when the doctor wakes up, and he isn't making any sense, more than usual. Yeah. And also, I like the fact that he refuses to believe Leela's intuition. Like, he sort of just dismisses her sense that something is very wrong, which is a refreshing change from Modern Who, where the doctor is always right.
Yes. Also, to give you an example of when he's just kind of babbling and not making any sense, he says, I got a bot of a shick. Yes. And I had to think about that for a second, because it's almost a spoonerism. A spoonerism is where you take the first two syllables or the first two morphemes, the sounds of words, and swap them. This is attributed to an Anglican clergyman named Reverend Spooner. So a spoonerism of his name would be Speverend Runer. And he said that retirement came to him as a blushing crow. And what you have here, a bot of a shick, is not a spoonerism, but it's a variant where instead of swapping the first two sounds, you swap the vowels inside the words. So a bot of a shick is a bit of a shock.
Yes, right. A bot of a shick. There's a moment where he talks about St. Elmo's fire that surrounds the doctor. That she saw this glow around him, and he says, it's a kind of St. Elmo's fire, which happens at sea. The massive ships get a electrical disturbance as they move through clouds and that sort of thing. There's a couple of funny moments here where she parrots him and he gets mad and that sort of thing. But he has no problem calling her a savage. I noticed that. Like, well, you're just a savage.
Of course, he could say that to anybody who's not a Time Lord.
Right. And he'll do it several times. In fact, this episode where he kind of calls her on her violent nature in these different circumstances. Like, hey, I'm not ashamed of who I am, and I can tell you, I can sense that there's evil and danger here. Right. So there's very interesting interactions between them.
And not only does Leela get to be right about sensing evil, she proposes the ultimate plan that gets them out of the situation, and the doctor dismisses it
until he does it.
Until he does it,
and takes credit for it.
Yep.
Once they're on the TARDIS base, the doctor stumbles on these others who are already infected, and they whammy him with the
base lightning.
So he's basically kind of getting hit twice with the alien presence, and so he starts, acting like them, like he's been taken over by the alien.
And he has a unique role, because as soon as he gets infected, actually the space lightning hits the TARDIS console first, and then it jumps to the doctor. And it tries to mess with Leela, but doesn't affect her for some reason. But as soon as the doctor's infected, the guys on the station hear this voice that says, the nucleus has found a host. So the doctor is carrying the nucleus of this infection. And Leela, we also learn, has been rejected. And so she is to be killed because she's been rejected for some reason. We don't know why yet.
Right.
And this is the first time I can remember. There may be previous instances, but this is the first time I can remember where the doctor tries to kill a companion. It is not the last, but it is the first time I can think of that a doctor tries to kill a companion. So you could imagine how frightening that would be for the kids in the audience. I mean, Tom Baker is this likable hero guy, and now he's trying to kill Leela.
Mm-hmm. Just at least he wasn't in his own control, unlike the Sixth Doctor. So he's also, they tell him that he's carrying the nucleus and he cannot be harmed, which is an important plot point because that means the Doctor is able to, especially once he gets control of himself again, he gets a little more freedom from danger, from the danger of being attacked. But he's carrying the nucleus, which means he's the host for whatever this species needs in order to start breeding itself.
Yeah,
and the Leela, meanwhile, had gone off, and she's found the supervisor who was hiding from the others, and the supervisor says the others are changed, and she says, how? Oh, their behavior. And I'm thinking, yeah, not to mention all the stuff on their face.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, how do you know? Oh, they're acting strange. Yeah, well, then they got the thing on the face. And then Leela, she stabs one of the infected in the back, and then goes
Kills
after
him.
Yeah, that goes for the Doctor. But before that one she stabs dies, the supervisor kind of stands over him, looks at his face, and gets whammied with the contact has been made. And then this is where the first episode ends, where the Doctor's sneaking up on Leela with this furry alien hand coming after her.
To kill her with a gun.
Yes. And as the next episode starts, we hear the Doctor's internal monologue, which was interesting, as he's trying to fight the infection of this alien species, which of course he wins. But he has to go catatonic to gather strength for his fight.
Yeah. He goes into meditation to slow down and stop the infection because he figures out the more he thinks, the more control this thing gets. So the solution is to stop thinking.
Right.
But you can't do that forever.
Exactly. Don't think about the pink elephant. The supervisor now, I keep forgetting his name. Lowe, I think his name is.
Lowe, yes.
He's hiding the fact that he's been taken over. From Leela, he's wearing this visor that covers his altered face.
Says he got caught a part of a laser blast and it damaged his eyes, so he's wearing the visor.
And so he suggests that they need to take the Doctor to another place in the solar system called the Baal Foundation in the asteroid belt, where he's going to get treated because they want to save the host, because of the nucleus. They need to save the Doctor. But they're not I thought it was odd that they're not afraid of being found out. Like as soon as someone starts examining them medically, not finding that they're there, that they've taken over these people. So I thought that was interesting.
Well, so Lowe's plan is he's going to infect people at the Baal Foundation, but they're not worried about the Doctor getting found out because as we learn once they get to the Baal Foundation, the nucleus is not like a physical thing that's easily detectable. It's like a mental virus rather than a physical virus.
Right.
Also, I don't think they explain on screen what Baal stands for, but in some spin-off literature, because guess what? There's a Big Finish sequel to this. We later learn it's called Revenge of the Swarm. We learned that Baal stands for like Alien Biology Foundation or something like that.
Center for Alien Biomorphology.
Biomorphology. All right. Then why isn't it Al-Bi?
Well, I thought about that, and maybe by the year 5000, English is flipped to become a head-first language, like Spanish. So you have the modifier after the noun that heads it.
Okay. Anything in 3,000 years, anything can happen. But what hasn't changed in 3,000 years is that hospital registration systems are still awful.
and they use the Red Cross symbol on the outside of the hospital, which it's built into an asteroid, and I think it looks really cool to have this globby asteroid with all these windows in it, like a beehive.
Exactly.
And so Leela is having to check in the Doctor, and she's asked plates of origin. She says Gallifrey, Ireland. Oh, I expect so. That's what she says. So then in the exam room where the Doctor's being checked out, we see K9 for the first time, and He's helping this Professor Marius, who runs the Bial Foundation, who's treating the doctor.
He is an expert in extraterrestrial pathological endomorphisms.
Yes, and there's an endless number of morphisms here. And they scan the doctor, and they find this viral infection in the brain.
That's affecting his behavior, which makes it a mind control parasite, the subject of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World episode in September.
Yeah, lots of connections.
I think the one this Friday. So check it out. It might be this Friday, it might be last Friday, depending on how these things come out. But in the exam room, the doctor wakes up and he meets K9 for the first time, and the K9 is actually the professor's computer, because this is this is the era in which computers were these independent things like that. But the doctor treats it like a puppy dog. He's like, "Oh, good boy, good boy."
Dr. Marius explains that on Earth he always had a dog, but the weight requirements up here in space wouldn't allow that. I assume he means bringing food up for the dog, because K9 has got to weigh more than a normal dog.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
So he got K9 as a substitute, and K9 is basically an Alexa that looks like a dog and that can shoot you dead.
Yes.
Yep.
So kind of a combination multifunction Swiss Army knife thing. I also like Professor Marius's initial reaction to the doctor, just based on his bohemian clothing. He thinks the doctor is one of those good-for-nothing space nicks.
Space hippie. So, which really actually is not far off the mark, frankly. But
it's not, yeah.
We find out that Leela is unaffected by this virus because it's an intellect virus. It goes after the intellect, and as the doctor says, she's all instinct and intuition because she's a savage race,
although they later call that into question, because it seems that Leela has a biological marker that makes her immune that then gets shared with the doctor.
Right, which is the ultimate solution is that biological marker. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting too that they explain that the virus first went after the TARDIS console because it was the biggest intellect it could find, and then it found the doctor.
Right. Yeah, the TARDIS was thinking more, and the doctor was just standing there staring off into space, so it went for the TARDIS. And one more early confirmation of the TARDIS as a living, thinking being.
That's right. That's right.
And since the TARDIS got infected, that's the reason there's a sequel.
Oh.
Because that infection stays there dormant in the TARDIS until the time of the Seventh Doctor, when it hatches out again.
Oh, see, I was just about to bring that up, because if it was in the TARDIS console, the contact has been made. So that's interesting. Someone else thought of that first. So Marius is trying to find out why Leela is immune, and nothing turns up. So he decides to operate, but they're interrupted by the Swarm, the so-called invisible enemy, which infects the shuttle pilots and causes a shuttle to crash into the asteroid, and thus disrupting everything. And that gives Lowe the opportunity. He's been infecting people to get them on his side, and so that gives them the opportunity to start attacking. They've cut the doctor and Marius and his assistants off from the rest of the station, and so Leela holds them off while Marius decides to clone the doctor and Leela in short-lived replicants, which apparently also includes cloning clothes and memories and all the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is, so scientifically this is interesting. Now, when this was made in 1977, Dolly the sheep had not been cloned yet.
Right.
So cloning was still science fiction, but it was something people were thinking about. And the doctor asks K9 for a history of cloning so he can figure out what the current state of the art is. And K9 says the first successful cloning experiment was in the year 3922. And I'm going, how about 1990? Approximately.
Yeah, right.
About 2,000 years earlier. But apparently what they may mean is this specific type of cloning where you get this short-lived, really perfect carbon copy clone that has all your memories and physical attributes and doesn't take 40 years to grow into you. Mm-hmm. Marius later mentions that they could make permanent, long-lasting clones, but it would take years. And so apparently they have, it's two different types of cloning. The type we're familiar with, where a clone has to grow from a zygote into you as an adult, and doesn't have your memories, but has completely different life experiences. and then this clone, which is like psychically bonded to you, and because of that's how it gets your memories, because it's psychically bonded to you. But that's also why it only lives for 10 minutes, because that psychic stress causes it to burn out.
Okay.
By the way, I also liked how when Lowe, because he's got his visor on, claiming he had a laser accident, so his eyes are damaged, he goes to see the eye doctor. Right. And so when he lifts his visor so the eye doctor can look at his eyes, that's when he face lightnings him.
Yep.
Also, I like how when Leela is looking for the doctor, she's heard over the loudspeaker or from someone else that he's in level X4. And so we see her, since she was practicing her name earlier, we see her running her finger along a sign on the wall that says level 4X. So she's sounding it out in her mind to figure out this is where the doctor is. So interestingly, also, all of the signs we see in the hospital, they'll say like level 4X, level 2X, level 3X. But on the loudspeaker, it's always flipped. It's always level X4, level X3, level X2.
Interesting. Maybe it's that head
first thing. Yeah.
Head first thing. Yeah. Someone must have thought that out.
Or it could be an accident.
I was going to say.
Yeah, it's probably more likely.
The writer, the person who set up the sets didn't listen to the writer, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So the doctor, with the whole point of the clones is that the Doctor and Leela clones are shrunk down and injected into his body, inner space style, or
Fantastic Voyage
style. Yes, without a ship.
This is really clearly inspired by Fantastic Voyage, because they're even he's planning on the clones coming out the tear duct, which is what happens in Fantastic Voyage.
Right. Are we going to be soon watching a first Doctor story where they're shrunk down or they're tiny?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not that small, but yes.
Yeah. Okay. So tiny doctors is going to be a thing again. So
also notice when they're injected, we see the clones of Leela and the Doctor in this swirling blue vortex. And so I can only assume that that's because Time Lords, being lords, are true blue bloods.
Oh.
So the clone Leela and the clone Doctor, as the third episode, the third part of this story begins, are in the Doctor's brain. And meanwhile, we find out that Leela is immune. Again, they say, but not because of a physical factor, but because of her predator instinct. Although they contradict that later. The clone Doctor, I'm just going to refer to him as the Doctor because it'll be confusing otherwise, says his brain doesn't, it doesn't look like the most advanced computer system ever. And I'm saying that's because brains aren't computers.
Yeah, exactly.
A common fallacy that people try to think of brains in terms of computers. Your brain is not a computer.
I like how in this episode, and this is something that I noticed as I was watching it, this series really moves along. Yeah. There is not a lot of downtime in this. It's a fun action adventure series, and the plot moves quite quickly for classic era Doctor Who, and each of the 4 parts is set in a different location. Apparently, this series involved more model building than anything else. So, like the first one, it's set on Titan.
Yep.
The second episode is set in the hospital in the asteroid belt. The third episode is set in the Doctor's brain, which is 1970s visual special effects land with lots of matte paintings and structures and things that are really cool to look at, but not biologically that realistic. And then in the fourth one, we go back to Titan. And so we've got multiple different locations we're jumping between. I like in the brain, the cool, unrealistic brain imagery. At one point, the Doctor and Leela are standing there in the brain, and this ball of light goes by, and Leela says, "What's that?" And he says, "Just a passing thought." Yeah. I also thought, given the speed they're walking through the brain, they're never going to get where they're going in 10 minutes.
Right.
No.
So the Doctor says at this point that Time Lord brains have the ability to tune themselves into the Time Lord intelligentsia, but that he lost the ability when he was exiled.
Yeah.
Is this something that ever occurs anywhere else? This tuning?
Yeah. Not with exactly that language, but yes, on Gallifrey they have this thing called the Matrix, which is like a supercomputer that houses all of the Time Lord experiences and Katras or something.
Right.
And they can enter the Matrix, and that happens in several episodes.
Okay, interesting. We do see back in the real world, or outside the Doctor's head, that K9 can be taken over by the swarm. They do get the lightning whammy on him, and he's sent to kill Leela. And when she's shot, clone Leela feels it. So you said before they're psychically linked,
right?
That's okay. I was wondering at this point whether she and K9 were faking this, that he got taken over in order to subvert the swarm.
No, he really attacks her, but she only like catches part of the blast and is only knocked out temporarily.
Yep.
Meanwhile, K9, and in this episode, it introduces the fact that we will see very frequently later on, that K9 has limited power reserves. So if he's shooting things, he's going to run out of power.
Okay.
And in this, after he shoots Leela, he announces that he's going into shutdown mode for self-regeneration. And since he's a computer, the effect of that is he's rebooted himself. The virus is gone.
Right.
Exactly.
Apparently all that is kept in RAM and not stored on the hard drive.
Yeah, exactly.
Inside his brain, the Doctor keeps referring to concepts, non-physical realities, as if they were real. So, over there's the imagination, and that's the mind. And when they're standing on the bridge between the left and the right brain, he says, you can't see the other side because that's the imagination. I'm thinking, well, that's not really how it works, but...
Well, you got the mind-brain interface, which is what exactly?
Yeah, right.
Well, I do like the fact that he stresses the mind and the brain are two entirely different things.
Sure.
They're linked, but they're two different things. So he's got mind-body dualism.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and however awkwardly we see it physically realized in this episode.
Yeah. Well, and the fact is, though, that there is no physical mind-brain interface. The mind is not one physical part, and the brain is not a different physical part.
This is where it plugs in.
Yeah.
And it is somewhat awkwardly realized because the brain set is wobbly not only metaphorically, but literally. When they bump into it, it wobbles. Yes. We also get, just like in Fantastic Voyage, we get some cool immune system attacks where these giant balls with white hair all over them attack Leela, and the Doctor says they're his phagocytes, so they're designed to eat invaders. And he calls them off. I love the way he calls them off. He connects a couple of synapses in his brain by grabbing them and shoving them together.
Yes.
And the phagocytes run off, and Leela says, "What did you do?" And he says, "I think I told them my liver is disintegrating." So I had to rush off to protect the liver.
Now, meanwhile, Lo, the infected supervisor from Titan, he has made his way into the examination chamber where the Doctor is and Marius is. He infects Marius, and he makes him clone him, and then is injected into the Doctor so he can hunt down the clones there and protect the nucleus.
So Marius is now compromised and helping the swarm.
Right. The nurse gets away here. That she'll eventually connect up with Leela and let her know what's going on. But the Doctor and Leela the Doctor finds the nucleus. Leela realizes that Lo is following them inside the Doctor's head, and so she goes off to stop him. But the Doctor finds the nucleus of the swarm, which is this sort of blob on the ground with an arm sticking out of the top. It's really
an arm
weird.
with a claw.
Yeah.
Looks like a lobster claw.
And that we find out the swarm intends, because now it has control of the Doctor, it intends to dominate not just the space, literal physical space, but also
which humans
time.
Are about to conquer.
Right, right. Yeah. But also time through the Doctor.
Right. So the plan up to this point for the swarm they've been waiting in space for eons, and now humans have come, and their plan is we're going to infect the entire human race, at least all the ones smart enough to carry us. And as they have the great breakout, we're going to take over all these planets. But now that the Doctor has interfered, we've got his time machine. We can take over all of time too.
Right. And now Leela, the clone Leela, has found Lo inside the doctor, and they get into it. They have a little fight.
Low.
Yes, Clone Low. And he shoots her. She stabs him. And the giant puffball phagocytes, they take Clone Low and eat him. Meanwhile, Marius, the doctor, the clone doctor and Clone Leela come out the tear duct. Marius grabs them and restores them. But it turns out, he thinks he's grabbing them, but what he's really grabbing is the nucleus is making its way out.
So the nucleus, Clone Doctor and Clone Leela disintegrated at the end of their 10 minutes, and we even see the remnants of their clothing and hair and stuff there in the Doctor's brain.
That's right.
But the nucleus learned from the Doctor the plan to get out the tear duct. So he leaves through the tear duct. Marius scoops him up in the syringe and then embiggens him, and he becomes a giant iridescent shrimp.
Giant hairy shrimp. Really weird. The
Doctor even refers to him as a pathetic crustacean.
Now, the Doctor is cured at this point because the nucleus is no longer in him.
So his skin clears up.
Yes, yes. It's a great.
He's cured, but also when when Clone Leela disintegrated, the antibodies that she carried transferred over to the Doctor.
Right,
which is why he's immune now.
Okay, right. That's what it is. And the nucleus now says because it's now big, it will no longer be forced to be invisible microbes. And then Leela has now dressed herself as a nurse. I didn't recognize her at first, frankly.
I know. She's also been using makeup to simulate the face scales and puffy eyebrows so she can pass as an infected person.
Yeah, the infected people must have really bad eyesight.
Exactly.
They've got all that stuff on their face, so that's got to interfere.
Right. So she helps the Doctor escape. They get to the TARDIS. Meanwhile, K9, who's been restored to himself, knocks out the infected Marius, and the Doctor and Leela isolate the antibody from Leela that cured the Doctor, and they use it on Marius. So it wasn't her predator instinct and lack of intellect that really was kept safe.
Maybe it was both.
Right.
But Marius is now back on Team Good.
Right. Now, and the Doctor, again, has made clear that he has no intention of killing the swarm, but he wants to stop them using this antibodies that they've cultivated of a particularly potent strain they've cultivated from Leela, and the Doctor has to deliver it to the hive, which is now started to take over Titan.
Yeah. So they got on a shuttle and they flew back to Titan, and that's then the Doctor was able to go out and cure Marius and then produce more of the antibodies that they can then take to Titan and solve the problem, supposedly.
And Leela calls the Doctor on, why are you willing to use these antibodies to kill the virus? I thought you didn't like killing, and we should just blow them all up. Right. And the Doctor is like, oh, that's your solution to everything. Knock it on the head. And he explains that he normally would not be willing to genocide a virus like this, but it's out of its natural realm now that it's been embiggened. And so it will not only do its thing in the microscopic world, it's going to upset the balance of the world. And that is a line which he will not allow to be crossed. So he is willing to kill the swarm for that reason.
Right. Yeah, because at first he says the weapons are useless. I think it's all just an excuse because he screwed up and lost the antibody sample.
Yeah.
He drops it and can't use it. So what he ends up having to do is wire up an oxygen tank and a blaster to shoot the oxygen tank when the breeding tank opens, and which is what he does.
And since Titan has a methane atmosphere, boom.
Yes, a very big boom. And then as we end the episode, and K9 went with them. He was very important to the carrying out of the plan. And there's a lot of running around in this final part of the story.
And with K9, we hear a phrase you hear a lot of: my power cells are going low, my power reserves are low.
Yes,
that is one of the complaints about K9 is he's great until like the crucial moment, and all of a sudden I can't do any more power. I can't do my blasters. I'm dead. You got to drag me out of here.
He needs a bigger battery pack.
Yeah.
So
I like how the Doctor has a leash ready to snap on K9 and drag him.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, he's right there. Well, he must run out of power often enough. They probably has the leash attached. So as we end the episode, the Titan base has been destroyed. The aliens have been stopped for now, and the Doctor and Leela go back to the Baal Foundation. They're dropping off K9, but Marius wants the Doctor to take K9 with him, because we need a new companion for the Doctor and Leela. So, and that's where we end things there.
And Marius gets the final line as the TARDIS dematerializes with K9 on board. I only hope he's TARDIS trained.
Yes. Nice dad joke there to the writers. Yep. So, any other notes on this episode from either of you?
Father? Just one quick one. The voice of the Nucleus and K9 were both voiced by John Leeson, who voiced K9 through most of the appearances of Doctor Who, including
New Who.
Yeah, so the one appearance where he shows up in New Who, John Leeson also voiced him.
I'm trying to think if it was Leeson or the other actor who voiced K9. I think it was Leeson, but I may be mistaken, who would actually during read-throughs get down on all fours and
I think it was
physically
Leeson.
Act out K9.
Oh, wow.
I think I seem to recall seeing the behind the scenes for the school episode, the episode New Who of Sarah Jane Smith, where he voiced him, and they actually showed him like crawling on the floor as K9.
Interesting. That's method acting. That's getting into it.
I had a couple of real quick notes. I like at one point when Leela's solution to everything is attack it, and the Doctor says, "Should we try using our intelligence?" And Leela says, "Well, if you think that's a good idea." It's just a little meta there. And then later on Titan, in the final episode, she totally knifes a guy in the neck.
Yes.
And kills him. And then she announces to the Doctor when he comes up, "I've found the answer. Knife them in the neck."
Yeah. Well, you could do that, or we could just blow everything up.
Yeah. Oh, and then after the Doctor has blown everything up and has taken credit for it, Leela's like, "Didn't I say we should do that? Wasn't that my idea?" And the Doctor says, "Well, then you should be very happy." And she's like, "Well, I guess I am."
Yeah, there's some good moments there with them. Yeah, it turns out that's what I'm seeing here. Marius tells the Doctor that he has to return to Earth, and so he can't take K9 with him. So if the Doctor would take him, I thought at one point the Doctor, when he was taking K9 into the TARDIS for the final battle, that he was just going to take off with him at the end and steal the dog. But thankfully, it was a gift.
One thing I did like that closing scene, they showed their trick they always do with the camera where you see K9 rolling in. Well, of course, the K9 model can't roll into the TARDIS because there's the lip there.
Right.
So they'll show it rolling towards the TARDIS, and then they pan the camera up so you can't actually see the dog stop before the door.
Yeah. In this case, the Doctor is standing in the only open door. The other door is closed. There is no way K9 is going to get over that lift, through that narrow space with only one door open, and past the Doctor who's standing in his way.
Yeah.
So they just pan up, and K9 is instantly somehow in the TARDIS.
Exactly.
All right. So before we finish up, I do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Doctor Who, including Andrew W., Chris M., Robert W., Stephen G., and Brian M. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What did you think of this story, The Invisible Enemy? Let us know by visiting sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page and leave us some feedback there, or you can send us an email to drwho@sqpn.com. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the 10th Doctor story, one of the best, Silence in the Library, in the introduction of River Song. Until then, Father Corey Stika, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
I'm glad to be here, and thank you.
Jimmy Aiken, thank you as well.
Thanks, Tom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, that is why my brain is so much superior to yours.
Right. This is going to be fun.